The evening sky draped itself in a somber gray, casting long, dancing reflections of streetlights across the rain-slicked roads. The city, usually a cacophony of hurried life, was now serenaded by a peaceful melody of gentle thunder and pattering rain. Cars glided through the downpour like slow-moving riverboats, their headlights cutting through the misty air. People, hidden beneath a canopy of colorful umbrellas, scurried along the sidewalks, their faces a blur of purpose and haste. Our camera drifts through this urban watercolor, passing by countless stories until it settles on one. A man driving alone, cocooned in the silence of his luxury car. His name is Arav. A young, successful businessman, he navigates his sleek black car through the drenched streets. Dressed in a sharp suit, his expression is a mask of calm, but his eyes hold a depth that speaks of something more. His phone buzzes relentlessly, a stream of business messages demanding his attention, but he lets them go unanswered. The city outside, vibrant and alive even in the rain, seems a world away from the hollowness he feels inside. He is a part of this world, yet feels utterly separate from it. A glance at the dashboard clock confirms he's late for a crucial meeting. His knuckles whiten as he tightens his grip on the steering wheel, a small crack in his composed facade. The rhythmic sweep of the windshield wipers becomes a maddening metronome, each swipe a reminder of passing time, of opportunities missed, of a life rich in possessions but starved of connection. Beneath the polished exterior of wealth and power, Arav is adrift in a quiet sea of loneliness. Miles away, in a different part of the city, stands Mira. Her world is a small flower stall, a humble splash of color against the gray backdrop. Simple, kind, and radiating a warmth that defies the cold rain, she gently arranges roses and lilies. Raindrops drum a soft rhythm on the tarpaulin overhead, a constant reminder of the day's slow business. Her mother is sick at home, and the few sales she makes today will determine if they have a meal on their table tonight. Every petal she touches, every stem she trims, is an act of hope. Nearby, the pure sound of a child's laughter cuts through the city's hum. A little boy, oblivious to the world's worries, joyfully kicks a bright red ball. The ball, however, has a mind of its own. It bounces, skids across the wet pavement, and rolls directly into the street. Without a second thought, the boy dashes after it, his eyes fixed only on his treasured toy. The sudden blare of car horns and the sharp shouts of pedestrians shatter the calm. The world seems to slow down, stretching the moment as danger looms, large and unavoidable. Just as the boy reaches the middle of the road, Arav's car rounds the corner. His eyes, once lost in thought, widen in horror. The child is a deer in his headlights. Time freezes. Before Arav can fully process the scene, a figure darts into the street. It's Mira. In a flash of desperate courage, she grabs the boy, pulling him back from the path of the oncoming vehicle. Arav slams on the brakes. The car screeches, sliding on the slick surface, and comes to a halt just inches from them. A wave of muddy water erupts, splashing high into the air, marking the near collision. A profound silence descends, broken only by the steady patter of the rain. Mira stands trembling, her simple dress soaked and stained with mud, her arms wrapped tightly around the crying child. Arav stumbles out of his car, his heart pounding in his chest, his face pale with shock. For the first time, their eyes meet. In that shared glance, a storm of emotions swirls. Fear, anger, relief, and something else, something undefinable. "Are you hurt?" Arav asks, his voice barely a whisper, thick with concern. Mira's fear quickly ignites into fury. Her voice, sharp and trembling, rises above the sound of the rain. "You could have killed him. You rich people, you think you own the roads, don't you? You drive like the world owes you everything." Each word is a dagger, piercing Arav's composure. He stands there, silent, absorbing her anger, the guilt heavy in his eyes. He opens his mouth to explain, to apologize again, but she's already turned away. Taking the little boy's hand, she walks away, her back rigid, disappearing into the rainy haze. The camera follows her retreating figure, a symbol of a world he can't seem to reach. Shaken, Arav gets back into his car. As he shuts the door, his leather wallet slips unnoticed from his coat pocket, landing with a soft thud in a muddy puddle by the curb. Lost in the turmoil of the moment, he drives away, the rain already washing away his tire tracks, erasing the scene of their dramatic encounter. The wallet, a small piece of his identity, lies forgotten near a bed of Mira's crushed and fallen flowers. Later that night, as the rain finally subsides, Mira is packing up her remaining flowers. Her eyes catch something dark, half buried in the mud. It's the wallet. She picks it up, carefully wiping away the grime. Hesitantly, she opens it. Inside, a collection of credit cards, a driver's license, and a faded photograph. The name on the cards reads Arav Khanna, CEO, Khanna Enterprises. A gasp escapes her lips. She recognizes the face from the photo. That man was him? The infamous, untouchable business tycoon. The scene cuts between two vastly different worlds. In his luxurious penthouse apartment, Arav stares out at the glittering city skyline, the near accident replaying in his mind like a broken film. He can't shake the image of the woman's fiery eyes, her fierce protectiveness. He wonders who she was, this stranger who had so thoroughly unnerved him. Meanwhile, in her small, humble home, Mira sits by her sleeping mother's bedside. She stares at the wallet in her hands, her anger softening into confusion. She whispers to herself. He didn't shout. He looked scared. He said he was sorry. Two lives, separated by a chasm of wealth and circumstance, are now unexpectedly linked, both lost in thought. The storm has passed. A final, distant flash of lightning illuminates the night sky before fading into darkness. Arav closes his eyes, trying to find sleep, completely unaware that the key to his next chapter lies in a small, muddy wallet across town. Mira, with a newfound sense of purpose, places the wallet safely on her nightstand and blows out the flickering candle, plunging the room into peaceful darkness. Sometimes a single accident isn't an ending. Sometimes it's the beginning of destiny. The morning after the rain was different. Sunlight sliced through the lingering clouds, making the city streets glisten with silver puddles. But for Arav Khanna, the world outside his penthouse window felt distant. He held a cup of coffee, the warmth doing little to thaw the new, unfamiliar feeling inside him. The city below was a sprawling empire he'd built, yet his mind kept replaying a single, stormy memory. A girl in the rain. Her voice, sharp with courage, her eyes, flashing with an anger he hadn't seen in his polished world. They echoed in his head, a melody more captivating than any business deal. Inside the towering glass walls of Khanna Enterprises, the usual hum of activity felt muffled. Employees rushed past with documents. Screens blinked with rising stock prices. But Arav stood by the window, a ghost in his own kingdom. His assistant's voice broke through the haze. "Sir, the board meeting is in 5 minutes." He nodded, a mechanical gesture. The world of profits and power, the only world he had known, suddenly felt silent. For the first time, he wondered if there was something more, something real, beyond the numbers. Miles away, in a small, humble corner of the same city, Mira's day began not with the view of a skyline, but with the gentle steam rising from a pot of tea. She poured a cup for her sick mother before turning to her other charge, a basket of vibrant, fragrant flowers. Her home was tiny, but every inch was filled with a quiet warmth and resilience. Her gaze fell on a sleek, expensive wallet sitting on the worn wooden table, a remnant from yesterday's storm. "I have to return it," she whispered to herself, her conscience as clear and bright as the morning dew on her flower petals. The journey to the other side of town was a stark reminder of the gap between their worlds. Mira stepped off the crowded bus into a landscape of glass mountains and concrete giants. She stood before the imposing entrance of Khanna Enterprises, the leather wallet clutched tightly in her hand. It felt like a passport to a foreign land she didn't belong in. The guards at the gate were firm, their expressions unyielding. No visitors without an appointment. Mira pleaded, her voice earnest. I just need 2 minutes. I have something that belongs to someone inside. They just shook their heads, their duty a solid wall she couldn't pass. Just then, a sleek black car glided to a silent stop at the curb. Arav stepped out, instinctively adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit. As the guards straightened up to greet him, his eyes scanned the entrance and landed on Mira. A spark of recognition, of surprise, flashed between them, the girl from the rain. She took a hesitant step forward, her nervousness warring with her resolve, and held out the wallet. You dropped this, she said, her voice steady. A slow smile spread across Arav's face, a genuine warmth reaching his eyes. You came all the way here? He asked, a hint of awe in his tone. He took the wallet, their fingers brushing for a fleeting second. Thank you, he said, the words feeling more significant than any multi-million-dollar contract he'd ever signed. Most people would have kept it. Mira's chin lifted slightly. Not everything is about money, she replied simply. The line struck him, a quiet arrow hitting a target he didn't know he had. And then something remarkable happened. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, Arav laughed. Not a polite chuckle for a business partner, but a real, unrestrained laugh that seemed to lighten the very air around him. Can I offer you a coffee? As a thank you. She met his gaze, a hint of a smile playing on her lips, and shook her head. Maybe another day. Days turned into a week. The memory of her words, "Not everything is about money," stayed with him. Driven by an impulse he didn't try to understand, Arav found himself walking into a small, unassuming roadside cafe, a world away from his usual five-star haunts. And then he froze. There she was, Mira, behind the counter, her hair tied back, an apron around her waist. She was wiping down a table, but she looked up as if sensing his presence. Their eyes met across the cozy room. A small, knowing smile touched her lips. You found me, she said, her voice a soft murmur. He walked towards the counter, feeling more grounded than he had in years. Or maybe destiny did, he replied. He ordered a coffee and chose a table near the window, feeling like he was finally in the right place. That cafe became his sanctuary. Arav became a regular, the staff soon recognizing the man in the sharp suits who would sit for hours. Sometimes he'd pretend to read the newspaper. Other times he'd just watch the world go by, content. But mostly he was there for their small talks. They spoke of everything and nothing. Her favorite flowers, his forgotten childhood dreams, silly stories that made them both laugh. He saw a lightness in her, a joy that was infectious. And with every visit, he felt a weight lifting from his own shoulders. He consciously hid his real identity, the name Kana, a heavy cloak he was afraid to wear. He feared that if she saw the billionaire, she would stop seeing the man who just wanted to share a coffee with her. One evening, the cafe felt empty. Mira wasn't there. A knot of worry tightened in Arav's chest. He casually asked the owner, who replied with a sigh, "Her mother is very ill. She had to rush home." That night, Arav drove through the labyrinthine streets until he found her modest home. He parked at a distance, watching through the window like a silent guardian. He saw her, her face etched with worry but her hands gentle as she cared for her mother. A profound sense of helplessness washed over him. All his money, all his power, felt useless. He couldn't walk in, but he could do something. He made a call, arranging for a renowned doctor to visit, paying for everything anonymously. He drove away before anyone could see him, leaving only his care behind. The next morning, Mira found a small plain envelope tucked near her door. Inside was enough cash to cover immediate needs, and a Dr. E.S. business card with the bill marked, "Paid in full." Her mother, feeling better after the doctor's visit, smiled weakly. "See? Someone cares for us." Mira's heart didn't need to guess. It whispered a single name: Arav. That evening at the cafe, the air between them was different. She looked at him, her eyes searching his. "Did you send that money?" she asked softly. Arav paused, the lie dying on his lips. "Maybe," he answered, his voice barely a whisper. Her expression hardened slightly. "Then don't," she said, her pride a fragile shield. "I don't want pity." He met her gaze, his own filled with an earnestness she couldn't ignore. "It wasn't pity, Mira. It was care." Time wove their lives together. Friendship blossomed into something deeper, an unspoken bond that felt both fragile and unbreakable. But fate, it seems, enjoys cruel twists. One afternoon, as Mira was clearing a table, she overheard two businessmen talking loudly. "Did you hear? The great Arav Khanna is buying this entire block, including this little cafe, for his next big project." The cup in her hand slipped, shattering on the floor. Arav Khanna. The name echoed in her ears. With trembling hands, she pulled out her phone and searched the name. The screen filled with images of the man she knew. Standing next to skyscrapers, shaking hands with celebrities, featured in magazines as one of the country's most powerful tycoons. Tears blurred her vision. The man she had let into her world, the man she cared for, was a lie. That night, Arav waited for her at the cafe, a hopeful smile on his face. But the woman who arrived was not the Mira he knew. She walked in from the rain, her face pale, her eyes stormy. "Why?" she asked, her voice trembling with betrayal. "Why didn't you tell me who you are?" He stood up, taking a step towards her. "Mira, He struggled for the right words. "Because I didn't want you to see the money, the name. I just wanted you to see me." But the hurt in her eyes was a chasm between them. "But you broke my trust," she whispered, the words like shards of glass. She turned to leave, to run back to a world that, while poor, was at least honest. He called out, his voice desperate. "Mira, please." She stopped at the door, but didn't turn around. "You live in another world, Arav," she said, her voice hollow. "Don't come back to mine." And she disappeared into the storm. Rain lashed against the windows as Arav stood alone in the empty cafe, thunder rolling overhead like the breaking of a heart. When hearts from two worlds meet, truth can either break them or bring them closer. For days, Arav didn't return to the cafe. His eyes were heavy, his heart even heavier. Back in the office, meetings became a blur of meaningless words. All he could see was the rain-slicked window and Mira's face. All he could hear was her voice, echoing in his mind. "You live in another world." The city lights sparkled below, a beautiful, sprawling emptiness. Without her, it was just a view. Mira tried to fall back into her old life. The rhythm of arranging flowers, brewing tea, and caring for her mother felt hollow now. Her smile, once so natural, had vanished. Every corner of her small world, every scent in the cafe, was a painful reminder of him. She told herself she didn't care, that it was for the best, but her heart still held a sliver of hope every time a car passed by. Was it him? Would he come back? Then, one morning, a knock on the door broke the silence. It wasn't Arav. It was a doctor, a stranger with a kind face. "I'm here to check on your mother," he explained. "A gentleman has already arranged and paid for her treatment." Mira's breath caught in her throat. She didn't need to ask who. A warmth spread through her chest, a tiny crack in the wall she'd built around her heart. She looked at the fresh flowers in her basket and whispered to herself, Maybe he still cares." Meanwhile, Arav was lost in the city's labyrinthine lanes, his car a silent shadow. He found her street, but didn't dare to stop. He just watched from a distance. He saw her helping an elderly neighbor, selling her flowers with a gentle smile, laughing with the neighborhood children. A small, genuine smile touched his own lips for the first time in days. "She's stronger than I ever imagined," he murmured, a mix of pride and longing in his voice. He finally pulled himself away, but fate had other plans. His car, a marvel of engineering, sputtered and died right there near her street. Frustration boiled over as he stepped out into the evening air. And then he saw her. She was walking towards him, carrying groceries, her steps light and sure. For a heartbeat, the world stopped. Their eyes met across the dusty road, a silent conversation of hurt and longing. She hesitated, her expression unreadable, then walked past him without a single word. Arav let out a slow breath. Some distances, he sighed, can't be crossed by money. That night, the sky opened up, just like the day they met. The rain came down in sheets. Mira rushed outside, frantically trying to cover her precious flower stall from the downpour. A voice cut through the sound of the storm. "Need help?" She looked up, and there he was, Arav, holding an umbrella, his clothes already darkening with rain. Her heart lurched. A storm of anger and emotion raged inside her. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice tight. He looked at her, his gaze steady and quiet. "Because I still care." He didn't wait for an answer. He knelt beside her, helping her gather the fallen, bruised flowers. His touch was gentle, his presence a strange comfort. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning," Arav said, his voice barely a whisper above the rain. "I was afraid you'd stop seeing me, the person, and only see the money." Mira's voice trembled when she replied, "You didn't have to hide who you are from me." "I didn't want you to feel small," he confessed, looking up at her, his eyes pleading for understanding. "I never wanted that." She stared back, and slowly, the anger that had protected her heart began to melt away, leaving only a profound, aching silence. A few days later, Arav appeared at her door again. This time, he was there to see her mother. Mira watched from the doorway as her mother welcomed him with a weak but genuine smile. "You're the man who saved us," she said, her voice frail but clear. As Arav sat by her bedside, she looked past him, her gaze finding Mira's. "Don't let pride destroy something so beautiful, Beta," she whispered, her words a gentle plea. Mira felt tears welling in her eyes, the truth of her mother's words hitting her with full force. Before he left, Arav handed Mira a small, plain white box. "It's nothing expensive," he said softly, almost apologetically. She opened it. Inside, resting on a bed of cotton, was a single paper crane. It was folded with incredible precision from a piece of his company's letterhead. She looked at him, confused. "Why this?" she asked. He met her gaze. "Because paper can tear easily," he explained, "but if you fold it right, if you're careful with it, it becomes something that can fly." The next day, just as a fragile hope began to bloom, it was crushed. A man in a sharp suit, one of Arav's employees, arrived at her house. "Sir has sent us with an offer to buy your flower stall," he announced, his tone cold and corporate. Betrayal, sharp and bitter, flooded Mira's heart. He was trying to own her, to buy her life just like he bought everything else. Fury propelled her all the way to his towering office building. She stormed in, her voice ringing with hurt and anger. "You think you can just buy my life? Is that what I am to you? Another one of your assets?" Arav stood there completely stunned, the confusion clear on his face. "What are you talking about? I didn't send anyone." That night, a frantic search for answers led Arav to the truth. It was his cousin, Rohan. Jealousy had been eating at Rohan for years, and the thought of Arav falling for a poor girl was, in his eyes, a stain on their family's name. Arav confronted him, his voice shaking with rage. "You had no right to interfere." Rohan just smirked, unrepentant. "I did what you were too weak to do. I protected your reputation." Arav turned his back on him, his decision made. "My love doesn't need a reputation," he said, his voice cold and final. It needs honesty. Without a second thought, Arav drove through the pouring rain straight back to Mira's house. He found her on the porch, crying softly, her shoulders shaking. He knocked gently. "Go away," she choked out, not even looking up. "I'm not like you." He stepped into the light, letting the rain soak him completely. "You're right," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "You're better than me, Mira. You have something I've spent my whole life looking for. You've given me a peace that money could never, ever buy." She finally looked up, and through her tears, she saw it in his eyes. The undeniable, heart-wrenching truth. He saw the pain on her face and knew he had no right to ask for more. He turned to leave, to disappear into the night, but as his hand touched the gate, he felt arms wrap around him from behind. It was Mira, holding on tight, her face pressed against his rain-soaked back. "I was scared," she whispered, her voice muffled by his shirt. "I was so scared of just being someone's pity project." A tear escaped Arav's eye, mingling with the rain as he smiled. "You were never pity, Mira," he said, turning to face her. "You were my reason." The rain softened, its rhythm like a gentle melody. They sat together under the old, worn-out umbrella, the silence between them no longer heavy with unspoken words, but warm and peaceful. From her window, Mira's mother watched them, a faint, knowing smile on her lips. The streetlights cast a golden glow, and for the first time, their two different worlds didn't feel so far apart. They felt like they were finally meeting, right here, without pride or fear. Arav took her hand, his fingers lacing through hers. "I don't know what happens next," he said, his voice filled with a new kind of resolve. "But no matter what, I'll fight for this. For us." Mira looked at their joined hands, then up at his face and nodded, a soft smile gracing her lips. "Then we fight together." Love doesn't always begin in comfort and certainty. Sometimes it begins in the middle of chaos, born from misunderstandings and drenched in rain. And it's in that chaos that it finds the courage to not just survive, but to truly grow. The next morning, a fragile peace settled over Mira's small home. Sunlight streamed through the soft curtains, painting everything in a warm, hopeful glow. Her mother, looking stronger than she had in months, sat up with a genuine smile as Arav carefully served her tea. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, soft laughter filled the air. Mira stood by the window, watching them. A gentle smile touched her lips, her eyes softening. The sharp edges of her past pain seemed to have worn smooth, and love was quietly, cautiously, returning to her world. Later, Arav and Mira walked to the small cafe where their story had first begun. The owner greeted them with a knowing, warm smile. Mira began arranging a bouquet of fresh flowers on the counter, her hands steady and sure. Arav, in a sight that made a few regulars whisper, sat beside her, awkwardly but earnestly helping to fold napkins. The whispers didn't matter. They exchanged a private smile, content in this simple, shared moment. This was their peace, a love that needed no grand gestures, only quiet understanding. Arav found himself back in his world of glass and steel, but his mind was far away. In a high-stakes board meeting, talk of profits and projects felt like a foreign language. Finally, he stood, his decision clear. "I'm taking a break," he announced, his voice firm. The room fell into a stunned silence. "I've spent my entire life chasing success. Now, I want to chase meaning." His assistant, understanding more than anyone, asked softly, "Because of her?" A genuine smile spread across Arav's face. "Because of love." That evening, his brother Rohan visited, his usual confidence replaced by a heavy cloud of regret. "I tried to keep you away from her," Rohan admitted, his voice barely a whisper. "I was wrong." Arav looked at him, the old resentments melting away. "You were protecting what you understood," he said gently. "I was protecting what I felt." In that moment, they were no longer a businessman and his misguided brother. They were just two men, finally free from the prisons of their own pride, embracing in forgiveness. But as Arav found his footing, Mira was losing hers. Sitting with her mother, her thoughts were a tangled mess of doubt. "He belongs to another world," she murmured, her voice laced with fear. "What if that world takes him back?" Her mother took her hand, her touch a gentle anchor. "If love is real, my dear, it doesn't take away. It brings together." Mira's gaze fell upon the small, delicate paper crane Arav had once given her, a fragile symbol of his care. "Then I'll trust destiny," she whispered, clinging to that sliver of hope. A few weeks later, the city was alive, glowing with the warm light of the festival. Mira decorated her humble flower stall with small, flickering lamps, her little corner of the world transformed into a magical space. Children with sparklers ran past, their laughter like tiny bells. Arav appeared out of the crowd, holding a single, perfect red rose. "Can I buy a flower?" he asked, a playful glint in his eye. Mira laughed, a sound as bright as the festival lights. "This one's free." The world around them seemed to glow, cocooning them in its warmth. But their perfect moment was shattered by the harsh flash of cameras. A group of reporters swarmed them. "Mr. Khanna, is this your new charity project?" a voice shouted. The question hit Mira like a physical blow. She froze, the warmth draining from her face replaced by familiar shame. Arav instinctively shielded her. "No," he said, his voice sharp and clear. "This is my life." But the damage was done. The crowd's whispers spread like wildfire, and Mira lowered her gaze, the old fear gripping her heart once more. The next morning, the whispers became headlines. "Billionaire businessman Arav Khanna's romance with poor flower girl." The words were plastered everywhere, turning her life into a public spectacle. Her world, so carefully rebuilt, crumbled again. On the street, every stare felt like an accusation, every whisper a judgment. She felt small, exposed, and utterly broken. Without a word to anyone, she packed her few belongings and her flowers and disappeared. When a frantic Arav rushed to her house, her mother could only offer 3 devastating words. "She's gone to the station." As if on cue, the rain began to fall again, the same cleansing, chaotic rain that had brought them together. Arav's heart pounded against his ribs as he drove recklessly through the slick city streets. He abandoned his car and ran into the crowded, echoing station, his eyes desperately searching every face. And then he saw her. A fleeting glimpse of her silhouette through the rain-streaked window of a departing bus. He shouted her name, his voice lost in the station's din, and ran, slipping on the wet platform but pushing himself back up, fueled by sheer desperation. The bus screeched to a halt at a stoplight. Arav wrenched the door open and stumbled aboard, drenched, breathless, and wild-eyed. The passengers stared, shocked into silence. Mira looked up, her face a mask of disbelief. He fell to his knees in the aisle beside her seat. "I don't care what they say," he gasped, his voice raw with emotion. "You are not my charity. You are my choice." Tears streamed down her face, mixing with the raindrops on her cheeks. "Arav, I'm so scared." He took her hand, his grip firm and unwavering. "Then let's be scared together." The world outside faded. Mira looked into his eyes and, with a slow, trembling breath, she nodded. They stepped off the bus, letting it pull away without them. They stood together in the pouring rain as the city lights blurred into a soft watercolor painting behind them. Arav pulled her close, his voice a soft whisper against her hair. "That night in the storm, I almost lost my life, but I found my heart." A small, watery laugh escaped Mira's lips. So, that accident, it really was destiny. He smiled, tucking a wet strand of hair behind her ear. "Yes, destiny knew what we didn't." They held each other, the rain washing away the headlines, the whispers, and all the pain, leaving only the pure, undeniable truth of their love. Months later, on a quiet, sun-dappled street, a new flower shop opened. A simple, elegant sign hung above the door, "Destiny Blooms." Inside, Mira arranged vibrant bouquets while Eirav, the former tycoon, happily wrote out receipts. Their easy laughter was the shop's constant background music. Children from the neighborhood would wave as they passed. Rohan often visited, no longer with warnings but with gifts and a proud, brotherly smile. The once lonely businessman had found his home among colors, scents, and a love that bloomed brighter than any flower. One afternoon, a soft drizzle began to fall. Mira and Arav stood outside their shop, hand in hand, watching the gentle rain. "Do you remember the first rain?" she asked softly. He nodded, pulling her a little closer. "It brought chaos," he said, "but it gave me you." She smiled up at him, her eyes reflecting the quiet joy of their life together. Some stories, after all, begin with mistakes, but end with miracles. When a love story is written by destiny, even the rain becomes poetry.